Well, hello everyone. Happy weekend to you as we are 1 week away from the beginning of the National Hockey League season, kicking off on Wednesday, and we are all getting excited about that. This is the Hockey Podcast. My name is Kevin Oland. Of course, you can follow me at myself at KVOLE. You can follow the Hockey Podcast on Facebook and follow podcast_hockey on Twitter. And it is, it is hockey season because I have received pictures of snow in Calgary. Is this correct, Heidi? Are you looking out your window and there is literal snow on your ground?
Well, I live in a basement suite, so no, I'm not looking out my window, but I ran some errands this morning, and I was out walking in it, and it was beautiful because it is true hockey weather.
Well, there we go. And, yes, it is the sign that we are beginning the season, which is great. Chris, how are you?
I'm doing well, and it is currently snowing in my backyard.
Wow. If you don't like the weather in Calgary, you just wait a minute. That's the philosophy. And the cats are doing okay?
Yep, all the cats are doing fine.
And
the loud one is locked away.
Oh, it is okay, I think, that a cat meows on the podcast. I don't think that there's any rules against that. Sean, how are you?
I'm doing well. As you said, it is snowing here in Calgary, and it's going to be a weekend of hunkering down and doing research for fantasy hockey pools.
There we go. We should cover some of that in a future podcast. But before we do that, we do need to address something that happened last week, and we have a segment for those who are new that listening. It's Heidi's question. And Heidi, we just recently started doing this. Heidi has asked us a question, and we don't always know what the question is going to be before. And the question that she asked caused a bit of controversy and discussion, constructively. And the frustration that really came through is not the question, but the fact of who was answering the question and not answering the question, and the length of time that we took on the question. And those criticisms are valid, and I want to start by apologizing to anyone that was offended by our approach. For us, this is not going to be the first time that we're going to have a conversation about male and female hockey relationships. It's not going to be just a 10-minute segment that we are going to do at one point in time and we're going to leave it. It is something that we are taking seriously. And we have some plans and have had some plans even before this question that were going on. So we will be bringing that up, and I want you to know, and thank you again for the people that have messaged me and have talked to me privately about it. I do appreciate the feedback, and we are going to continue to be better moving forward. I don't know if you guys want to say something on your guys' end and how you feel about that.
First, as the person who made the question and did leave it for the guys to answer in my absence. I did do that on purpose and for a reason. So I wanted to, for lack of a better term, maybe possibly stir things up in the sense of maybe getting a conversation going, an important conversation going in a different way. And kind of like how Kevin said before, like maybe we should have communicated either like before the question was asked or after that. Obviously we're going to keep talking about this. But it was, my intention was to sort of surprise the guys with this question because I wanted to see what the kinds of, how someone responds to this kind of question when A, they have no time to think about it, and B, when my fellow co-hosts know that I'm not listening. I was not there. I was not even in cell service when these guys recorded all this. I didn't find out about any of the backlash until I came back into cell service on Sunday afternoon. So that was my reasoning behind why I kind of posed that question at the end. And I honestly, the type of feedback I expected to get was, I thought it would be more people maybe being critical of the answers, or of the fact that it was even being talked about. But I guess I was sort of wrong on that. But I just want to say that, like, obviously, like, I feel horrible that it kind of got a little, I don't know what kind of words to say, but it got a little tough just in general on Twitter, and just in general in public and in private. So but I'm really glad that you guys had the discussion. I was actually I was happy with the way that you guys answered the question. I was actually with Sean and Chris last night. We were talking, and I said that almost, like, honestly, one of the biggest impacts I think it was is when Sean posed the question, and then, like, I could, like, feel, like, even through recording, the silence of like the oh damn, like, we just got asked that question. So that is about all I kind of have to say on it right now. And I'm kind of looking forward to being able to discuss this, discuss these types of things further.
Yeah, sorry about that. I really think that it's a subject that deserves proper time and proper setup. And like Heidi said, and like Kevin said, we didn't communicate the plans and the fact that is going to come on this episode, and sort of just to react to how we reacted to that. Yes, I knew beforehand what the question was, because otherwise we wouldn't have a question from Heidi. And I felt that it was something that should be talked about, and I felt that I should follow the request of Heidi to make it a spur of the moment answer from the rest of the guys, and instead of taking it upon myself to either tell them or not even ask the question at all. I do understand that there are women out there who did not like how we handled it, and how it was three men who were answering the question and there was no female perspective. I hope that our explanation today can help quell that, and understand that what we did came out of a true hope to create some discussion and further along this discussion and further along this issue, because it is an issue that we feel is something that needs to be talked about, and something that needs to be furthered along, and make it so that everyone can enjoy hockey as much as as men have throughout the past few decades. We understand that, and I understand that we say things is just as important as what we say, and how we said things last week, and how we reacted to some of the criticism wasn't the best. We are working on it. I am working on it, and going forward, I really do think that regardless of the makeup of the group, regardless of how many men, how many women are. We won't shy away from talking about this, but we will be a lot more cognizant and about how we talk about it, and explain what our thought process is of how we're talking about it beforehand, so that there isn't any confusion and it doesn't come across as us being maybe potentially coming across as exclusionary when that's not nearly anywhere near what we're trying to do here. So I think that it's best that we accept the blame for not communicating what the whole plan was beforehand or even afterwards more clearly, and to everyone who has provided us constructive criticism, you have been heard. We have thought about this a lot, and even though we may disagree on this, we are trying to get to that same common goal of a more equal ground for men and women when they want to watch, discuss, and enjoy hockey.
Yeah, you kind of hit that nail on the head there, Sean. A bunch of stuff that I was planning on saying, you kind of beat me to the punch. But one thing I do kind of want to add that Kevin had alluded to is that even prior to this conversation that we had last week, Heidi was planning on having a female only podcast where they were going to talk about their perspectives and whatnot on hockey. And obviously, I guess at this point, that conversation will be had on that podcast as well. But it's not like we're trying to say that Heidi is the only perspective on women and women fans in the hockey environment. So, yeah, we're going to try and do better. We failed at communicating that it was more than just a one-episode discussion last week. And ultimately, we're just trying to handle this better moving forward.
Yep. And so keep an eye out for that. And the only other thing that I'm going to add here is there are, and I'll include Tyler in this, although Tyler is not involved in this one specifically. There are 5 human beings here that are involved, and there are different perspectives, and there are different things, and we are not always going to be perfect. That doesn't mean that there's not room for criticism and improvement, but we are also learning. So as we appreciate your patience, we thank you for your feedback, and we know that it is an important conversation because even this week we have stuff that is timely about this. Her name is Fayola Dozithee. She is a security guard in Scottsdale, Arizona. She had a body cam video on her and was in a situation that is obviously quite awkward, obviously quite difficult. And maybe the reason why you don't know the name Fayola Dozithee is because that has not been the name that has been part of the conversation when it comes to this.
So thanks guys for coming. Obviously, not something that I think any of us really were sure talking about today, but unfortunately, the situation we're in. Regret any of my actions that would ever put a distraction on the team or distress any individual. I take a lot of pride in preparing myself for the season and representing the Toronto Maple Leafs as well as I can. So unfortunately, due to the situation, I'm afraid I can't really make any other comments. But that's all I have, and thank you guys for coming out.
Yes, Austin Matthews has been charged with disorderly conduct from an incident with Fayola Dozithee back in the end of May when him and a group of others basically did a number of really inappropriate things, and it has led to a lot of questions, and it has led to a fascinating debate and conversation about some things that I don't necessarily think are relevant, but I'm going to start with Heidi on this. What are your thoughts of this, and what are your thoughts of how this has been communicated, the conversations around it?
Yeah, so when I first heard that this happened, all I heard was, like, the automatic headline was, like, Austin Matthews, disorderly conduct, or something along this, like, that's the only, I think that was one of the first headlines I read, and then I saw something else where, like, someone put a comment about it, how basically he had dropped his pants, and honestly, I was like, oh, good, another hockey player, like, did something silly, was goofing around with his friends, and is going to probably get a slap on the wrist or something. And then, like, honestly, like, almost the third or fourth tweet I saw about this was somebody quote tweeting an article. I can't remember what news outlet had the article, but in their quote tweet said, not in this headline or anywhere near the top of the story is the fact that Austin Matthews approached a woman in a car, tried to, like, jiggle the car handle and joke about getting into the car. And then as soon as I saw that, and I was like, oh, this is a much bigger deal than is kind of being put out there. But and maybe, like, I just got lucky and I saw these details almost right away in this whole story coming out. And I kind of made a point of making sure that anything that I was sharing about this, it had those details in it, because that's an important part of the discussion, is not just the fact that he was goofing off with his buddies, but that this was a little bit more serious. And just in terms of, like, the kind of the conversations and stuff around it, I'm actually surprised that I didn't actually see too much, at least on Twitter and just with talking with people, I didn't see too much of anything that was just saying that, oh, people should leave Austin Matthews alone, all this stuff. What he did was just shouldn't be talked about. Like, I actually didn't see very much of that stuff. I actually saw more of the, hey, Austin Matthews did something really shitty, and it's more serious than people that it originally brought up. So actually, as I said, like, the discussion I saw about it was actually less controversial than and less, like, kind of triggering than I would have thought, because people seem to actually know details.
Sean, Chris?
I think, yeah, I had a very similar sort of journey through the story that Heidi had. I saw the disorderly conduct tweets coming out that he had been charged with that, and but I didn't really see much more on that, and I was like, well, this is weird and all that. Then I saw that, yeah, like you said, he pulled his pants down but it was down to his underwear. And I thought, well, that's just weird, but fun. That's kind of funny. Yeah, it's weird. That's quite the mature behavior for what would be the captain of the Toronto Maple Leafs. And then I actually was able to see the details on it, and it really did not sit well with me, because as a man, I don't necessarily know exactly how it is to be a woman alone at night, and to have a group of men come up and try and get into your car. But it does sound scary, and as someone who has a niece, I hope that we can get past to this point where women don't feel that scared and don't feel that prone and vulnerable in those situations, because we have created a society that doesn't do that. But it just, it really irked me. And as much as you kind of want to make light of this, you can't. And I never actually saw anyone really giving Austin Matthews a pass on this or saying leave him alone, but I did see a lot of jokes. And I think that's just as frustrating to me, because I don't think it really gives this incident the weight and that it deserves, because I think it is something that he needs to be better at, and we as men need to be better at, and understand that even like he was drunk, but that shouldn't take away from the fact that he created a situation where he did an action that really terrified a woman. And then even more so, you dig deeper into the details when she brought to light the how dismissive the Matthews family was towards was what motivated to make the charges. And I think, as much as you want your kids to be this angel of a person, and you still have to be open to the fact that they're not perfect, and they could have made a mistake like that, and you have to give the benefit of the doubt to the accuser until proven otherwise at this point. And the fact that they actually had video evidence from surveillance at the condo, as well as the body camera, the fact that they were so dismissive of it really just comes across as the amount of entitlement that family. I hope they can learn from that and move forward. But I think it's an important discussion to have, again, to just raise awareness to the actions of that he made there are not acceptable.
Yeah, like the fact that it was a group of 4 drunken adult males approaching a vehicle that they weren't not necessarily welcome to go into, and they're trying to get into it at 2 a.m. with a lone female in the vehicle. Like, it may have appeared innocent at the very first glance of the headline, but once you actually dig into the details, it's not something that is acceptable. And like Sean said, it is disappointing at how dismissive the Matthews have treated this situation. And obviously, at this point, you hope that, because he is in his younger 20s, that this is going to be a learning moment for him, and that he's not going to make something like this. He's not going to do something like this again. And that, that he ultimately learns from it. And at this point, it appears that it might have cost him the captaincy.
So I'm not going to talk about the captaincy, because I don't feel... this is just, for me, I don't think that this is the most important thing in this. I know that Leaf fans are wanting to talk about if he should be captain or not, and I know that this has been a debate. I'm not going to go there, because I actually, in my view, I think that this is the last thing that this is important about. But I do want to talk about the Leafs management reaction to this and the NHL's management reaction to this. Kyle Dubas said that he found out about this on Twitter. He was not aware of this. I admit that I was a little skeptical at first, but I'm not sure. So I want to take this from Kyle Dubas and the Toronto Maple Leafs from a management perspective. What would you hope or you recommend that the Leafs do about this in terms of consequences, or I hate to use the word, well, I don't hate to use the word, it's the right word, it's punishment.
That's a good question. We're all thinking about it.
Yeah, it is a good question, Kevin. I think he does need to fade, because I think there needs to be, the NHL needs to hold their players to a higher standard, and they need to, and the Maple Leafs as well, and they need to act accordingly. And he should be. I don't know if there's anything in the CBA that can do it. That's my only concern on this. I don't know if there's a behavioral section in his contract, which would allow the league and the Leafs to make some sort of punishment on this. But I think there definitely needs to be something, whether it is a suspension of a couple games or a fine of some sort. But that's what they can do. if it's as long as there is some sort of behavioral conduct clause in his contract, and I hope there is, because I think he does deserve to face to face some punishment for what he did.
Yeah, I feel like maybe if there is something in the CBA that would cover that, it would probably be like the same clause that they would have used against. I'm trying to remember the guy's name that played for LA, Voinov.
Slava Voinov, yeah.
Yeah. That's basically all I had to add, is that might be what they use against Matthews, is that same clause.
Yeah, I think that there definitely should be some kind of a suspension or fine in this. Like, I don't think that this should be swept under the rug and not like. And I didn't find Austin Matthews' apology like really that sincere. And just going back to the fact that Kyle Dubas said that he didn't hear about it until Twitter, like, that part kind of sketches me out on that thing too, that like nobody's taking this seriously. Like, Toronto's not taking this seriously, and Austin Matthews isn't taking this seriously. So there needs to definitely be some kind of punishment. Like, I remember a couple of years ago, when I believe it was Glenn Gaudette who was still the coach of the Flames, and it was Johnny Gaudreau, and it was someone else.
Sean Monahan.
Was it? I think it was Sean Monahan.
And it wasn't Gulletts, and it was Hartley.
Yeah, and he. Okay, it was Hartley. Yeah. He sat them for a game because they showed up to. I think they showed up to practice like hungover, and they sat them for a game just for that. So if Toronto doesn't do anything about this, like, I will be upset about it.
What about the NHL? Because I have not heard from Gary Bettman, or I haven't seen Gary Bettman make a comment about this.
Yeah, neither have I.
I have not seen, and Sean may be right about where the NHL and NHLPA are at in this in terms of conduct, but I am going to point out something here. Antonio Brown will probably never play a game in the NFL again for some of the stuff that he has done. And Adrian Peterson was put on an exempt list. Now, I'm not saying that the NFL has mastered the punishment and dealing with this, because they absolutely have not. But I do find it fascinating that the NFL has had this law, in spite of what they've had, they have at least done something. And I'm just curious why the NHL has been silent on this.
I feel like no one can really answer that other than the NHL management at this point. I think it kind of appears obvious at this point that they're just trying to hope that it just gets swept away and they don't have to deal with it.
I think there might be a little bit of that, but I think there might be also them just trying to get the details straight here.
Yeah,
before they make a decision here, and like as Dubas said, he found out about it on Twitter, so they were caught off guard by this. In terms of saying that the Leafs aren't taking it seriously or the NHL isn't taking it seriously, I think that's to be determined. I do think they do need to make a decision and a statement and hand down some punishment for me to think that they are taking it seriously enough. But at this point, it's to be determined for me, just because I think that they were caught off guard and now they have to figure out what exactly they're going to do about this. And that just goes back to showing how immature and how poorly Matthews and his family has handled this. This incident happened in May. It's now almost October.
Yeah.
Had they handled this in May when it happened, came out, did a statement, then the Leafs and the NHL could have levied down their decisions and hopefully their punishments, and Austin Matthews could have gone on a huge like a huge campaign to show that he understands what he's done wrong, this wouldn't be an issue at this point. But now it's an issue. Now it's something that they have to deal with going into the start of the season, and that's brutal. That's just shows how poorly and immature that Austin Matthews handled this, and how poorly his family has handled this. And as I said, the NHL and Leafs are to be determined in terms of how they've, in terms of my thought process on how they've handled this. But in terms of Matthews, I think it just shows, just as I said, the immaturity and how poorly they've handled this. Just blows my mind.
Yeah, and I think the other interesting thing about this that is quite something to me is really when I look back, and you look back to it was 2 years ago that Babcock went to Arizona to have a private conversation about Austin Matthews. There was that whole Babcock-Matthews feud when John Tavares was signed, and I remember thinking about that there is something that seemed amiss at that point with where they saw Austin Matthews. And I'm not saying the guy is not a great player, because I think he's obviously a very talented player. But there was obviously Babcock, who, like him or not, I think he knows his players, and I think he knows what he's seeing. And he saw something that maybe we didn't want to acknowledge. Maybe he saw this immaturity already and felt that a guy like Tavares would be a good addition to that locker room. So I think that this is going to be very interesting going forward. It's going to be a conversation going forward. But I do want to make sure that this name is still in people's heads. And before we move on, her name is Fayola Dozithee. She is a security guard in Scottsdale. I know that name hasn't been in everybody's mind, but I do hope that it's there. Heidi, at least, I said Heidi was a little bit happy, but she said, well, I only get mildly amused. But there was some good news in Calgary Flames land this week. Let's hear from Brad Treliving.
Well, obviously, it's a good day. It's a really good day for the Calgary Flames, our team, our organization, I think our city. When I sat here before you, it seemed like a long time ago when our season broke up in April. And the question was asked about the summer to-do list. The number one thing at that time and remained throughout the summer was getting Matthew signed. It took longer than we all hoped, but when you're talking about a player at this level, when you're talking about the summer that we've gone through, which was a unique summer within the industry, the hope and excitement was always about that day when we could sit in front of you and say it's done.
So Heidi, it's done. Matthew Tkachuk signed a 3-year deal. He is technically going to be considered the highest paid Calgary Flame in history. It is expected that he's playing tonight. It's not a big deal if he doesn't. But we'll get to what Matthew had to say, but I wanted to hear from Heidi and from everybody else. What did you think? Are you about Matthew Tkachuk back in the Flames fold?
Well, there's probably a reason why you got to me first, because obviously I'm very excited. If people are listening and they don't know how big of a Matthew Tkachuk fan I am, follow me on Twitter at Heidi Maceballs. You will find out that way, or have a conversation with me. I'm really happy. The day that news broke, I'm up pretty early for work, and Ryan Leslie had just tweeted out that something had went on overnight, and the reports came out. And I'm in general, I'm happy with the deal. I would have hoped something with a little bit more term, but the deal was good, and I'm just super excited to have him back. And not that I didn't think that he was going to be back, but but yeah, no, it was definitely, I think it was the highlight of my week.
Sean, Chris, your perspective from outside of Calgary land.
They had to make this deal happen. I think it was very similar to the Brock Besser deal in the fact that they didn't have the cap space to sign him long term, as much as they both sides wanted it. He's a big part of the Flames going forwards. This is going to be a very interesting year for the Flames. They've moved on from Mike Smith. They're handing the starting role over to David Rittich full time, basically, and they just need to see Matthew Tkachuk play like he did last year, and put up all those points. Because if he does, then they are a very good spot to take another run at the Pacific Division crown. Which, by the way, they do have their banner up in the Saddle Dome. They just did it with no pomp and circumstance. And I think it's a good deal for both sides on a 3-year bridge deal for sure.
Yeah, like Matthew Tkachuk is a huge part of the Flames' future moving forward in that core group that they have, and Sean kind of took a bunch of my points that I was going to say again. So I don't have a whole lot more to add, but obviously he's an important part of the Flames moving forward, and it was a deal that worked out for both sides. And like Heidi mentioned, they probably wanted it to be more long-term, but like Sean had added, that with the Besser situation, there just wasn't cap space there to make it happen. So, yeah.
And I think that one of the other things is Matthew Tkachuk has become a polarizing figure, especially in Flames world and Canucks world. And some love him. Flames fans love him. Other opponents, maybe, I think more, I might suggest that Oiler fans probably have more of a hate relationship with Matthew Tkachuk than Canuck fans in general because of last year's incident with Zach Kassian. Some have questioned his maturity and his leadership, but I want to play this as part of the press conference because I think that this said a little bit about Matthew Tkachuk.
The best case scenario happened where there isn't one guy that had to be moved in this process. That was a fear. You never want to see that happen. And we had such a great team last year, and we brought in some pieces that I think made us that much better and can be more successful. Like we're a 100-point team last year in the regular season, and basically everyone's back. So we're chomping at the bit. And I think, having the finish we had last year made it even more clear to me that, I want to win more with this group. I want to win in Calgary.
Heidi, I feel like starting. What is that? In that quote encapsulate there? It's a combination of a couple there, but is that what is part of your love for Chucky?
Well, yeah, if you don't listen to interviews and stuff with him, and I'm not saying that he doesn't say anything genuine at all, but he is so well spoken and he loves this team. I don't know, maybe this is a hot take, but there's little doubt in my mind that he will probably be the future captain. So I admire how much he loves the team and he loves the community, and I think he handled all the questions very well, considering that from what I heard in another interview with him, I think later on after the press conference, I think he got something like 2 hours of sleep or something that the night before, because they were negotiating his deal, and then he had to jump on a plane. So, and that was after a full day of practice with the London Knights. So, that's all that stuff just made me, of course, made my heart go pitter patter.
So Heidi, are you going to buy the Rat King T-shirt now?
No, because you would want that too much, Sean, and so I'm not going to do it.
But it wouldn't be Sean if he wasn't poking a little fun your way.
Right.
Oh, yes, for sure.
Okay, am I right or wrong here? Are the Oiler fans more frustrated with Tkachuk or the Canuck fan base?
No, Sean just likes to pretend that he doesn't like Matthew Tkachuk, but just to give me crap about it. So I think the Canuck fans don't actually hate him that much. At least the Canuck fans in this podcast.
I think we view Tkachuk more as a Kessler type player in the sense of you love to have him, but you hate him once he's not yours.
Yeah, which is totally understandable.
That and Canucks fans are too busy fighting amongst themselves to care about other teams.
That's true. That's very true.
That's a good point. We've got some interesting things to talk about with the Canucks here, and we'll get to that in a second. But I do want to. There's a couple of other interesting things going on with the Flames. Devontae Smith-Pelly has been released from his PTO. Brandon Davidson has cleared waivers, so he is heading down to Stockton. This is the lineup tonight versus the Oilers in preseason. Monahan, Gaudreau, and Lindholm. Backlund, Tkachuk, he's playing, and Frolik. Bennett, Lucic, and Majapani. Jankowski, Zarnik, and Tobias Reeder, who apparently they are working on a contract with. So
they signed it.
They have signed it. So Tobias Reeder, the man that scored no goals with the Edmonton Oilers and blamed for their playoff failures by Bob Nicholson, is now a part of the Calgary Flames organization. On defense, we have Brody and Giordano, Hamonic and Hanifin, Anderson and McDonald. Where are we? Is McDonald on this team? Because this is a PTO. Has he made the team, or are we not sure yet?
Yeah, I was actually surprised to see that line because I hadn't heard anything, or that pairing, because I hadn't heard anything more about McDonald unless I missed something. So that's a very good question.
Who's on the team instead of him, though?
Bill Peters has not been happy with Oliver Shillington.
Yeah, that it would be Shillington, right? So, as Kevin said, like I don't think that Bill Peters has been happy with Shillington, and neither have I really. So I can kind of see that.
According to Pat Steinberg, Zach Ronaldo and Andrew McDonald are in line for contract offers. I don't think Devin's going to be very happy about this Zach Ronaldo thing, Sean, as he mentioned last year.
Oh, he is not going to be happy.
But McDonald, I think, is a good guy to have. I think that'll be an interesting one, and I think maybe that one of the lessons is Shillington isn't quite there yet and needs some more time. So that is that. Anything else, Heidi, with the Flames that I am missing?
I don't think so. I'm kind of I'm interested to see that line of Lucic and Bennett and Mangiapane. Like the idea of Lucic and Bennett playing together in the line sounds fun. So I'm looking forward to the game tonight and to kind of see how that's gonna go because obviously there is a lot of talk, and just with all the circumstances between the PTOs and the trades and the signings and stuff of former Flames playing on the Oilers and former Oilers playing on the Flames. So tonight's game, considering it's a preseason game, is going to be very interesting.
Yes, I think so.
Do you think that duo is going to be Calgary's version of the Bash Brothers? I
don't know. Maybe it would be. That would be pretty fun. But we'll see how that line does, and if it's something that sticks around.
Yes, it will be interesting. I also think that they're going to have a very interesting week before they start their season, because I'm wondering if there's another. I know that Matthew didn't want to trade, but something is still. I look at this lineup and I can see some room for some movement, but we'll see. We will see on that. There was one more signing, and I'm actually was kind of surprised by this, but Patrick Laine was signed. Here was Kevin Cheveldayoff and what he had to say.
Well, we had discussed different things over the course of not only this year, last year, and I think that the marketplace is. It's a changing marketplace, and you have to, kind of try to adapt. For us, we're obviously, dealing with the salary cap situation here, we have to find, different deals for different situations that make some things work. We've still got some work ahead of us here yet, and so really, as excited as I am, I've got to put my work boots back on and keep on grinding.
So Patrick Laine, 2 years, $13.5 million. I was kind of surprised that maybe I'm wrong, but I would have thought that they would have made a deal with Connor sooner, the way that Laine was talking. What did you guys think?
I was surprised that Laine signed before Connor for sure. I think he's a better player than Patrick Laine, someone who you can play up and down the lineup, and he's not going to complain as Patrick Laine did in his negotiations. And it just he makes players around him better, while Laine, I don't think necessarily does. He's just a pure sniper who, once he gets the puck, he's very dangerous, but I don't think he necessarily makes the line mates that he plays with better. So I think it's a good deal for Laine. I think it's an interesting deal for the Winnipeg Jets, who have had a very, very interesting offseason. And I think that that's honestly something we need to find someone to bring on and talk about, because you look at what they've gone through, and they've lost their full right side of their defense, and with Byfuglien in limbo on whether or not he's going to play. And then they still have Kyle Connor to sign as well. I think getting him there does help them, because they are in, I think, the toughest division in the NHL this season. And I wouldn't be surprised if they don't make the playoffs because of how tough that division is and how much they've lost on the blue line. But having Patrick Laine, who can go off for 6 goals in 2 games, can really help you. So I think as much as I like Kyle Connor more, I think the threat of Patrick Laine is going to help them be a lot more competitive of a team going forwards than without him.
And maybe it's just my take on it, but I feel like the sign Laine first, maybe they see him as more as the star or franchise player, so they thought he might be more important as far as like a PR move, maybe not as far as team building, because like Sean said, Connor's probably the better player and better for making his teammates better, but I felt like it might be more of a PR move than anything else.
Yeah, that's actually a really interesting point there, Chris. I would have never even thought about it that way, but I was just I'm just surprised that considering that Patrick Laine was number 2 in that draft that year, next to Austin Matthews, he's only getting paid so that works out to 6.5 per year.
Yeah.
Yes, or 6.75, I think. So, I'm surprised, but I guess his performance wasn't that great last year. I can't pull out the numbers. I don't remember them. I just remember hearing more about Laine and his video game problems and stuff like that. So, but it's nice that they got him at least for a little bit. But I thought he was gonna actually be the one that held out a little bit more. And that they would have signed Connor first.
Well, he go ahead.
Sorry about that. Yeah, he scored 18 goals in November of last year, so he had 21 goals at the beginning of December, and he scored 3 in December, 1 in January, 4 in March, 4 in February, 1 in March, and none in April.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
He had one really good month, and then just coasted and did not really help really didn't really help the Jets going after that. So I think that was the biggest stumbling point. Was he still scored 30 goals last year, but he had 21 before the beginning of December. And he scored 9 goals after that.
Yeah, and I think he scored 5 of those goals in one game, because I think that was the whole thing with that Safeway contest. they always talk about how if somebody scores 5 goals, like, you win, and Safeway never thinks that's going to win. I think that was Patrick Laine. So 5 of those goals that 1 month were one game. Like, that's some pretty streaky, inconsistent goal scoring there.
Yeah, and what was his in his playoff? He has not been good in the playoffs for 2 years. So it's interesting there. I don't know. But I also don't know what the trade market for Patrick Laine would be either. So, but we're right. So if you're a Winnipeg Jets fan, if you're a Winnipeg Jets podcast, we want to hear from you, because it's one of the quieter stories that has not taken. We haven't spent as much time on the Winnipeg Jets as I would like, and they are a fascinating team, for sure. But let's get to the Canucks. And there, I did point to 3 players when I sent out the tweet. And the 3 players that I pointed was Gaudette, Macewan, and Goldobin. And there is a reason I did that, because they actually do connect. And in terms of these are guys, and there's probably a few others, but let's talk basically about these 3 here that are. There's debate on whether which lineup they should be in, the Vancouver Canuck lineup or the Utica Comets lineup. And I have something here, but I got to find it first. So I want to kind of hear from Sean or Chris. If you had your roster decision, and in your final roster, Travis Green comes up to you and says, okay, who should be on your main lineup at the start of the season here when you're playing the Edmonton Oilers on Thursday? Who's on of those 3, and who would you want to send to Utica?
If I had my choice, I think all 3 would be on the 23-man roster. I would have Gaudette on the 3rd line and Macewan on the 4th line, and Goldobin as an extra skater. But that it doesn't include all the waiver wire issues and asset management issues and the amount of cap space issues that the Canucks have to deal with in regards to Tim Schaller and Louis Eriksson specifically. They can make that work long term, because they can make it work short term with Roussel on the LTIR. But once he comes back, the Canucks have some decisions to make on how to create enough cap space for them to be able to run a full team and not have to worry about any injuries causing them to dress shorthanded, which I believe the Flames did. Multiple teams have, but the one that comes to mind, I think the Flames did a couple years into the new cap system, because they miscalculated it as well, and that's not fair to the players that you have brought in, they've trained and all that, so they need to figure that out. But for me, I would love to see Gaudette on the 3rd line. He's proven that he can score at this point, and he deserves a shot. I like Zach Macewan as a 4th liner, because I think he brings speed, size, and grit to that, while still being able to drive the net and create havoc in front of it and create some goals. Something that I don't think the 4th line has really done a good job of for the Canucks over the past couple seasons. And Goldobin, I think, is someone who could be a very good extra forward who can slide into scoring a top 9 role, top 6 role when needed, when there's injury concerns. But if it was just up to me, I'd have all 3 on the 23-man roster. But Goldobin would be sitting up eating popcorn in the press box.
Chris, what about you?
Yeah, I'm in agreement with Sean in that regard. Like, the ideal situation is to have the 3 young guys all into the lineup, but as Sean also alluded to, is the fact that you run into situations with, like, I think everyone's expecting that Schaller's being sent down to Utica, but everyone is wondering, like, how we're actually going to deal with the Louis situation. And because of Gaudette playing as well as he is, potentially a Sutter situation as well.
Yeah, I think the one thing that was interesting that Travis Green said, and I'm not able to. I don't think it's going to sound good, so I'm not going to play it. But Travis Green said that Gaudette would be a third liner. So probably the sense is Gaudette's probably going to be down in Utica. I think Zach McEwen has shown a lot more than Goldobin in terms of preseason. That I think legitimately it is time for this guy to get a lengthy look in the NHL at some point this year. And Goldobin, yeah, I don't know. I know that we have people on this podcast that will defend him to the hilts, but I haven't seen enough from him yet, and I don't think he showed, for a guy with the pressure that he had in this preseason, or not pressure, the expectation, the opportunity. I don't think he took advantage of it. I don't think he showed enough this preseason overall to say that he should be a guy on this roster on a regular basis.
To me, Gaudette was the one that showed that drive, not Goldobin.
Yeah. Heidi, did you? I don't.
Yeah,
mean, go ahead, Sean.
Sorry, McEwen has already been sent down to Utica as well, but I think he'll be back up come the end of the season and will be playing pretty regularly in the lineup. I think like I said, I really like his game. I know Corey Hergott will be quite happy to be able to follow him on Utica, but I'm sure he wants to see him make the Canucks full time going real soon here. Goldobin, yeah, there just seems to be something missing from him, where he just doesn't seem to want to take the bull by the horns and just take a roster spot away from someone else and make it his. He was given the opportunity to play with Bo Horvat and JT Miller. They looked okay. And then once Berchi got on, he looked even better. And then Pearson's looked all right, looked better than Goldobin as well. I just don't know. I said I like him as a 13th or 14th forward, because you need someone like that to be able to step in and make sure that you still have some good top six skill when injuries happen. But I don't see him in the top 12 to start the season for sure.
Yeah, it's certainly it's interesting. And we talked about the Flames a little bit on the roster spot. It's going to be interesting to see what I still think the Canucks have some things to do. I think they are still some handcuffs. We've talked about that at length, but they may find a way to do some things. Heidi, did you have any thoughts on this? I don't mean to leave you out.
Nope. I do not. I do not have enough familiarity with the players to say much of anything.
Fair enough. So, okay. So we are amongst the beginning of the hockey season. We are going to be rolling out predictions. Everyone's going to be rolling out predictions. As Sean mentioned earlier, there's fantasy hockey and stuff like that. We have our own predictions. And I'm just going to turn this and the Hockey Podcast Hopeless Predictions in said radio voice. So Sean has a list of things that he's going to ask us, and we are going to answer. So Sean, take it away.
All right. So the first one has to do with the James Neal and Milan Lucic trade. The two conditions that have to be met for a third round pick to be sent to Calgary is James Neal has to score at least 21 goals and Lucic has to score at least 10 fewer goals than Neal. Will Calgary get that third round pick?
I say Calgary will not get that third round pick because I think Lucic is going to do better than Neal.
You think Lucic is going to score more goals than Neal?
Yep.
Wow. So how many goals do you think Lucic is going to score?
Oh, I have no idea. I just know he's going to be better than Neal.
Okay. Wow, you heard it there.
Take Heidi.
I might have had some time to think about this, but yeah, that's just how I feel after seeing James Neal basically suck so much last year. So
Clearly, you didn't see Lucic suck at Edmonton enough, though.
Yeah, but that's Edmonton. Like, I think Edmonton kills everyone's soul. So I think Lucci's going to do a lot better being in a different environment.
But yeah, as far as my take, I'm going to guess that there's a legitimate chance Calgary might get that. But that's just my take.
I don't think Neil's going to score 20 goals. I think that one of the debates that will probably go on in Oilers camp is who is going to be with McDavid and Draisaitl. And I think they're going to try Neil there first, but I don't necessarily think he's going to stick that long there. So I don't think he's going to get 20 goals. I think Lucic, I have him between 5 and 10. I think he may get 6. Maybe that's low. So it has to be 10. Or so wait, Neil has to get 20 and has to have 10 more goals than Lucic.
21 goals.
So I'm going to say no. I do not think Neil is going to get 21 goals. And I think it's going to be tight. It's going to be tight to see if he gets 10 more. I think Neil will score more than Lucic, though. But whether it's 10, I don't know.
And now I'm going to be the captain segue and talking about Edmonton sucking souls out of the players. How many years will McDavid age this season?
I guess I'll jump in first if everyone else is hesitating. I feel like it's going to be like a typical American president after an 8-year term where it looks like they aged 20 years.
I'm sorry, I'm just laughing about that. That's great. I think that it will be at least 10, and we will hear rumors about possible gray hairs forming.
I think 10 to 15. I think we'll hear. I agree with Heidi. We might hear gray hairs, and I'm concerned we might see him walk in with a cane.
All right. And then the next one.
Jack's gonna kill us.
Hey, he picked the Canucks to finish 8th in the Pacific. He has nothing to talk about here.
All right. Yeah, there we go.
Who wins Battle Hughes?
It's hard to say on the surface level just because they play two different positions, but I feel like Jack's obviously going to score more goals, but I feel like as far as importance to the team, it might be close to a tie.
I'm going to go Jack. Defense is harder to play at a younger age. I think Jack's going to have an opportunity to play with Taylor Hall, who's a really talented guy. So I think Jack will be better and will win that. That's not to say Quinn is going to be terrible, but it is tough to play defense in the NHL.
Yeah, I'm gonna say Jack too, and Jack's on a team that's going to be very interesting to watch this year with Hall and with PK Subban and all that stuff. So yeah, I'll say Jack.
All right. If Tkachuk and Ferland collide, will the world explode?
I feel like it might on Twitter.
Yeah, that's actually a very good point. Like, obviously, like, for me, I am like almost dreaming of that because I like hockey fights. That might be another one of my hot takes. So I think for some people who it will be like definitely like a fight that you'll be interested in seeing. I definitely can see on Twitter, though, that people getting, upset about maybe who won the fight or whatever, who instigated it, shouldn't have instigated it. But if the world doesn't explode, Twitter will explode.
Oh, I thought Twitter was the world. This. Ferland and Tkachuk will be fascinating, and I think Roussel will be back in time for the Flames and Canucks to start meeting. So Lucic and Roussel might also be an underrated little Twitter war as well. So yes, the world will explode.
All right.
Actually, who would win a fight between Ferland and Tkachuk?
I don't know if either one.
I don't think. Yeah.
I think honestly, like they would just given it, they would just beat the shit out of each other. Like
it'd be like the ending of Rocky.
Yes. Yeah.
Where they just both the double knockout.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree.
All right. So now that the Flames have the player that ruins playoff chances, will the Flames make the playoffs now that they have Tobias Reeder?
Yes. I thought you were going to go slightly different with this question, Sean, about the whole blaming thing, but I think that I think that despite having him on the Flames, the Flames can still make the playoffs.
I will agree with Heidi, but I would find it endlessly amusing if the Flames miss the playoffs this upcoming season.
Yeah. Well, I guess we will know who to blame, I guess, but
yeah, maybe that's why Tree signed him. I'm going to say yes. Vancouver is going to be a threat, but and I think that Vegas is going to win the division, and I think San Jose is going to finish second. I still think they're a bit more talented than the Flames. Vancouver, I have fourth. The team that is interesting me, that I'm very interested about, I know that people have them in blow up, but where are the Ducks?
They're sort of in that same spot that the Kings are, where they're a lot of their top end skill is really old, but they still have some decent younger players as well. I think they could surprise, but I also think you're too high on San Jose.
You think?
I think they lost a lot of. I think they lost a lot of skill, and I think that if you listen to Kevin Woodley talk about the style of goaltending that's successful in the NHL, that's not Martin Jones's game. And so until Martin Jones shows me that he's made some changes and has to his game and can sustainably hold them, which is tough for a goalie, it usually takes about a season for them to make those changes and for them to stick and become second nature. I think he's going to struggle this year, and they do not have a competent backup, I don't think, that can step up and do sort of like what Talbot did for Lundqvist a few years back, do what Rittich sort of did to Mike Smith this past year with the Flames, and be able to relieve him and give them a chance to win. They have to outscore their opponents significantly to have a chance here. So no, I do think the Flames are making the playoffs. But if they don't, it won't be Tobias Reeder that will be blamed. It'll be Nahid Nenshi.
Who?
Hot take, Sean.
Mayor Nenshi. Yeah. Mayor Nenshi. Yes. Because he get blamed. He's good.
Because they didn't have they don't have the new arena just quite yet.
Oh. And the other team I forgot, maybe not the Ducks, but I guess where are we with the Coyotes? Is the other?
I think they're right in there with the Canucks to be battling for that for a wild card spot.
Yeah. And where are you with the Oilers?
Step below.
Okay. Yeah, I have them 6th right now.
Yeah.
LA and Edmonton are all kind of the bottom dwellers of the Pacific at this point.
See, the thing about the Sharks is
we might as well just do. Sorry, go ahead, Kevin.
Oh, the thing about the Sharks is we keep knocking them out, or we keep counting them out, and then they keep surviving. So I'm not sure I'm. Like I think in talent wise, you're right. They have a significant loss, but they seem to find ways to win.
It's hard to argue that, but at the same time, they also haven't had a hurdle or a coacher join their roster in the past couple of years that kind of makes up for what they lost.
No.
What I'll say is, I think what we can do, and I know Heidi didn't really want to go into traditional predictions, but we might as well do it now that we've kind of been talking about it. We'll just do the Pacific Division, just because we're Canucks and Flames fans, and I guess I'll lead on that then. I've got Vegas winning it. I've got Flames 2nd. I have Sharks 3rd. Arizona 5th. Then Edmonton 6th. Ducks 7th, and Kings 8th.
Given that I have had 0 time to think about this, thanks, Kevin.
Anytime.
For bringing that up. I actually kind of, other than I would. I'm going to be biased, but I will switch what Sean said, basically just switch Vegas and Calgary, and actually I agree with the rest of that, to be honest.
And not to be unoriginal, but I kind of had to agree with the order that Sean gave.
Yeah. I'll repeat mine. Vegas 1st, San Jose 2nd, Calgary 3rd, Vancouver 4th, Arizona 5th, Oilers 6th, Ducks 7th, Kings 8th, and my hot take is I think Vegas represents the West in the final.
I don't even think that's that hot of a take.
I think a lot of people are looking at Dallas, Nashville, St. Louis.
I've seen a bunch of Nashville predictions for them representing the West in the final.
Will be interesting. And then the last prediction, who is traded first? Michael Frolik or Brandon Sutter?
Frolik.
I'm gonna say Sutter, just because the fact that Frolik hasn't been traded yet makes me feel like they're just never gonna trade Frolik.
I feel like both of them are kind of in that forever limbo zone, but as much as I want Sutter to be first, I feel like Frolik will be the first one to drop.
It's an easier trade to make.
Yeah, I think it's going to be Sutter. I think there is a built-in replacement with Gaudette right there and ready, and I don't think there is one for Frolik currently on the Flames.
But is Sutter wanted though?
As long as he's healthy, I think they can find someone to trade for him. That's the only caveat on that, is if Sutter's healthy and Gaudette is ripping it up in Utica or is playing really well on the Canucks and they just want to slide him to center, I think there is there'll be a few teams that will be willing to give up assets for him.
All right.
But I also think that we all know that there will be at least a handful of people on Canucks Twitter that no matter what the Canucks get for Sutter, if they're able to trade him, it's still not good enough.
Yeah, it's true. It is true. And finally, it was on this day, September 30th, 1972. Let me take you back.
Here, at the end of 27 astounding days, there is time for one more moment to define the heart and character of Canadian hockey.
Yes, Paul Henderson scored the goal in the Summit Series, and we were not alive for this. So I can't ask anyone where they were because they were not there. So, but what I can ask is this play, is this goal as iconic as the previous generations before you have called it?
Yes. If you can sit down and talk to anyone who was alive and could remember, if they were in school, they rolled in TVs into classrooms, gymnasiums, auditoriums, and school was almost quote unquote canceled so that Canada as a nation could watch the hockey game in the morning. That's how, if that doesn't say anything, doesn't show how much of a hockey nation this country is, I don't know what could. It was absolutely a nation unifying moment for Canada.
I feel like whoever was alive for that moment, they feel just as strongly as it being an iconic Canadian hockey history moment as our generation likely feels about Crosby and the Golden Goal in 2010.
Yeah, literally Chris just said like what I was going to say about comparing it to the 2010 goal. Like, it's obviously like the fact that we weren't around when this happened, but we've heard about it, we've heard the call, we've seen the clips, like that. It definitely like kind of solidifies that it's definitely that like iconic moment.
Yeah. Oh, I feel like someone was going to say something. No. Yeah.
Go for it, Kev.
Yeah. I mean, I think the two are a little bit different in terms of politics and a lot of like climate, because Russia was the enemy at that time. And I think one of my favorite games of all time was when the Canadians played the Russian Red Army during when Tkachuk and all those guys came. That was one of my favorite games. But just it was so unique because we didn't know about these guys. It was just a different planet. The Canadian gold medal, the Crosby gold medal game, to me, the big thing with that was I feel like it was a celebration of a really well done and I'm not necessarily being biased, I think it's factual. Like, if you look back, I think the 2010 Winter Olympics in Vancouver there were issues, but I think it came off without much of a hitch, and it was a celebration, and it came off a really great Olympic performance, not only for the men's hockey team, not only for the women's hockey team, but really how well Canada did overall. I think that it was just an icing on the cake for that moment. And so I think politically it's a bit different, but I do think that they're both iconic in their own way.
Oh, they are totally very different. And as you said, the political climate, the Cold War, all this, like I urge anyone to dig into and read up on the Summit Series and what went on, especially once the series shifted to Russia and everything that went on there. It's mind blowing. It's something I don't think any of us in this generation can really comprehend because of the political climate that was going on then. And I agree, Kevin. The Crosby Golden Goal was just an exuberant celebration I get chills every time I look back to that time. I went out to pubs and bars to watch different events. Olympics. I went for every Canada game, especially in the medal round, the quarters, semis, and the gold medal. I was out with friends watching it. When Crosby scored, I literally ran around the whole bar and high-fived everyone. But if you look back at what that Paul Henderson goal and that Summit Series, I think you put it right. With the political side of it was really, really just added a different layer to it more than anything else, and it's not something that we can really comprehend as people who were born way after that.
Yeah. It's fascinating. It is a fascinating story for sure. Well, that is going to wrap up our podcast. So I don't know. Okay. Next week we're back on. Was there any? I know that there was a discussion of doing something with the others. That's not happening. Was there something being talked about doing something midweek or?
No. I think the plan is that us here in Calgary are going to go to the Pig and Duke pub and watch the game. And we can reconvene on next Saturday when the hockey games mean something again, and I can't wait.
Yes, it's finally here. It's very exciting. The snow is the signs are there. Still working on the website, making some progress there. But again, like us on Facebook, the Hockey Podcast, especially there because we have 5 likes. And we have 19 followers on the Hockey Podcast, so do us both a favor and give us a follow on both of those. The website is being built. And again, how do we follow you guys? Start with Sean.
I am Beardy Canucks 03 on Twitter.
Heidi.
At Heidi Amazeballs, so HEID Amazeballs, and that is me on Twitter and any other social media.
Chris.
And just like Heidi, mine is also cross-platform, and it is at Schneidz, SCHNEIDZ.
Now, there's another person. What's his name? He hasn't been on for a really long time. What?
I think it starts with a T.
Tyler? He will be back next week. He's been busy doing some other stuff, but he is at T-Noble on Twitter. And, of course, we miss him. Shout out to him. We will talk to you all next week. Again, thanks to Lodgepole Kind for the theme music. Thanks, everyone, for listening. And we will talk to you all very soon. Bye for now.